Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Language Arts Gallery. Today, we're going to cover week 4, lesson 2 of our English for Academic Purposes course. And we are going to review strategies for essay assessment. We are going to talk about writer's stance in academic essays. And we're going to talk about strategies for recognizing the author's bias in a text. So let's go ahead and let's get started. Hello, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started with week 4, lesson 2 of our English for Academic Purposes course. So I want to begin with a bit of a review of writing in a standardized testing environment. It's important to remember that argument is the foundation of English academic writing. And remember, argument is influenced by culture. Not all cultures are very direct in their writing. But when we write for an Anglophone audience, it's important that we're clear and direct. And that includes having a thesis statement in our introduction and ensuring that all the facts of the essay support that thesis statement. English is what's known as a writer-responsible language. That means as a writer, it's your responsibility to be clear and direct and to construct meaning for your audience. Bear in mind, this is not the same in all cultures. In some cultures, like Japan, writing is reader responsible. In other words, the reader is responsible for making meaning from the text. So in order to allow the reader to do that, the writer should not be very direct. They should leave the text open to interpretation. Bear in mind that English is not like that. It's your responsibility to make the meaning clear. Okay, so keep in mind that there's no one right way to do this. There just are different ways to do this. And when you're writing for an Anglophone audience, you want to keep this in mind. Okay, so when you're in a standardized essay testing environment, it's important to know the question that you're answering. So let's look at the question that we saw last week. Is technology making our lives better or worse? State your opinion on either side of the issue. Do not list pros and cons. Okay, so that's important. Don't just tell the good things and the bad things about technology. You have to pick a side and you have to argue for that side. So you're going to be making an argument in support of either side of the issue. And that would be evident in your thesis statement. So let's take a look at what the thesis statement for this type of essay question might look like. Would it be A, technology has both benefits and drawbacks? B, technology may be positive or negative depending on how it's used? Or C, in my opinion, technology has made our lives infinitely better. Well, the first thesis there is simply talking about pros and cons, benefits and drawbacks. The second one, well, the author's really unsure. They're saying it may be positive or it may be negative. It's actually the third thesis statement that gives a strong argument on one side of the issue. So after you create your thesis statement, make sure you focus the body of your essay. Make sure all the points in the body support the thesis statement. Don't spend too much time talking about the other sides of the issue. Okay, when you're introducing the topic, you might say something like, well, there's some debate about whether technology has positively or negatively impacted people's lives. X, Y, and Z are clear benefits, right? So you don't want to get too involved with the negative side of things if you're arguing on the positive side of things. So don't go beyond a simple mention of the negative aspects because you're likely to confuse the reader. They're going to say, is he for it or is he against it, right? So be firm and take a stand in your introduction. So this is a good example here. Imagine a student is applying for a scholarship and asks the teacher for a recommendation. And this is what the teacher says. I'm so happy to recommend this student for the scholarship to attend State University. Let me start by saying that he has an excellent academic record. He's received A's in all his coursework. He also has a strong history of publishing research. That sounds great so far. That's a terrific recommendation. You're talking about all positive things. Let's continue and see what else this writer does. However, I have some concerns related to this student's ability to succeed at this university. At times, I wonder if his work ethic is strong enough to succeed in this field of study. He's often late with assignments, and sometimes I need to force him to resubmit his work. Despite these concerns, I think he can still do well in the program. I strongly recommend him for this scholarship. What would that student's reaction be? They'd probably be pretty shocked, right? They don't want that teacher mentioning all these bad things, right? That teacher is supposed to be arguing in favor of that student attending the university. It's the same thing when we're writing. We don't want to argue too strongly against ourselves. Don't mention the things that are against the argument that we're trying to prove. Okay, think of yourself as a lawyer in court. If you were in court, you wouldn't mention things that could damage your client's case, right? So when you're writing, think of yourself as a lawyer. You want to always be arguing for your side of the issue. Okay, so here we have our color-coded thesis map. Okay, I've engaged the reader with my first sentence there. Okay, technological development has been proceeding at an exponential pace. I introduced the topic. Well, there is debate about the net impact of technology on humanity. I've introduced my thesis map. The benefits to healthcare, transportation, and education are undeniable. So I've got 3 strong points. And then I've got my thesis statement highlighted there in purple. I can see the topic sentences, which are highlighted in dark blue. They all match the thesis map, and they match up to the summary. Okay, so everything follows that outline that we looked at in our last class. So after you get this outline completed, you simply fill in the other pieces of the puzzle. That's your hook, your topic, your supporting details, include transition words, and a concluding thought for your conclusion. Okay, don't spend too much time on the hook when you're in a standardized testing environment. You just want to come up with a strong sentence to engage the reader. So, very often we come under time pressure when we're taking these tests. It's important before you go into the test to review the rubric. Figure out where your points are coming from, and that can help you make good decisions on test day about where you're going to focus your time. Briefly outline your essay. Remember, you're going to form that skeleton, and practice. Practice writing under time conditions. When you're doing your homework, ensure that you're writing under time conditions. And remember, if you've studied, if you've done all the practice, you're going to do a great job. So don't get too nervous come test day. So let's get started with today's discussion. I want to talk about what constitutes a healthy diet. Well, if you ask me, I think it should be things like fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean sources of protein, and drinking plenty of water. Does anyone know what GMOs are? GMOs are genetically modified organisms. And there are different opinions on this topic. Some people think that they're going to end world hunger. Other people think they're very dangerous and they shouldn't be going into our bodies. So I want to know what your opinion is of these foods. Do you think they're good? Do you think they're dangerous? Okay, take a moment and either share your thoughts with a classmate or a friend or jot them down on a piece of paper. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about writer's stance. Okay, let's take a look at this first paragraph here. Genetically modified organisms have become a prominent part of modern agriculture, but they raise concerns about their potential negative impact on our biodiversity, health, and environment. I firmly believe the use of GMOs should be banned. So how does this author feel about GMOs? Well, I can tell from the author's thesis statement. He's very much against them. He says, I firmly believe they should be banned. What reasons does he give in support of his argument? Well, I can go back to the thesis map. He thinks they have a negative impact on biodiversity, health, and the environment. And I can see that in all of these topic sentences. Okay, he talks about biodiversity, health, and environmental impacts. And at what point in the essay are we able to determine this author's stance? Right away, in the introduction, right? The author is very direct. He's very clear in how he feels about this topic. So we saw our thesis map, which we said was that sentence right here, biodiversity, health, and the environment. We saw our topic sentences. And we want to look for transitions or signposting as well. I see, firstly, additionally, furthermore, in conclusion, as a result, when, while. These are all transition words that the author uses throughout his writing. So when we're talking about writer's stance, we're talking about the writer's attitude towards the topic. Writers can feel very passionate. They can feel indifferent. They can feel objective. They might feel critical of a particular issue. Okay, so how do you think this author feels? Well, I don't think he's indifferent. I do think he's passionate. I don't think he's very objective necessarily. I think he's quite critical of GMOs. Okay, but remember, these adjectives are not the only ones that we can use to describe the writer's stance. There's literally a limitless amount of adjectives we can use to describe a writer's stance. So how do you think you can tell a writer's stance? Well, we can look for their word choice, their sentence structure, or which side of the issue they choose to focus on. Okay, so let's take a look at the language used here. Okay, and we are going to try to strengthen this author's stance here. So the author starts by saying, they raise concerns. I want to make this stronger. I could say, they raise serious concerns. The author also says there's a potential negative impact. Instead of potential negative impact, I'm going to say clear negative impact. Here he says they can harm biodiversity. I want to be stronger. I'm going to say they cause serious harm to biodiversity. Instead of may outcompete, I'm just going to say outcompete. Whenever we add modal verbs like may, might, or could, we soften the author's position. Here we want to make the author's position a bit firmer. We want to be a bit stronger. Instead of reduce the diversity of plant life, I'm going to say devastate the diversity of plant life. And instead of disrupt, I want to say destroy. So remember, when you're writing, the stance you take is going to depend on who you're writing for. You have to think about how your audience feels about the topic. So imagine you're writing an essay about the value of university education. How would you approach the topic differently if you were writing for a union of university professors or the head of a trade school that teaches welding? Well, if you're writing for university professors, you probably wouldn't need to convince them about the value of university education. They would probably agree with you. If you were writing for the head of a trade school that teaches welding, you're going to need to be a bit more passionate, and you're going to need to argue strongly in favor of the value of a university education. Okay, so you would have to think about how those two groups of people feel. Okay, so I want you now to work either independently or with a friend or a classmate, and I want you to go over this essay here. I want you to tell me the author's stance on the role science has played in our lives. Okay, what language makes this stance so clear? And who might the writer's audience have been? Okay, so pause your video and work through that. Okay, so now that we've come back, we can see that this author is very much in favor of the role science has played in our food choices and in our eating habits. Okay, and I'm going to highlight some language here that I think might be a little bit challenging for us. Okay, we've got revolutionized. When something has revolutionized something, it's changed it, usually in a very positive way. Increased crop yields, that's the amount of crops that farmers are able to grow. Reduced food scarcity. If something is scarce, it's difficult to come by. So in other words, the author is saying that food is more plentiful. Enriched has a very positive connotation. When you enrich food with essential nutrients like vitamins and minerals, you're making that food healthier. In the realm of food safety, realm is like the area or the field. Not just food safety standards, but rigorous food safety standards. They're very strong to ensure that this food is safe for us to eat. It's free from pathogens and contaminants. These are things that could hurt us. And these products, they're a testament to the positive impact of science on our diet. If something is a testament to something, that means it's a statement or it's proof of something. And it's reduced the prevalence of diet-related diseases. If something is prevalent, it's very common. So when we reduce the prevalence of something, that means we're making it less common. So diseases are becoming less common. Now let's talk about recognizing bias. Sometimes it's very easy to understand how a writer feels, and sometimes it's a little bit more difficult. Okay, so when you're looking at a text, think about source of the information, whether there's any financial interest controlling that source. Are there any political interests? Are both sides of the argument presented fairly? What language is being used? And is the author simply making assertions, or are they supporting these assertions with facts? Okay, so let's look at the title here, The Science Behind GMOs. Can we tell the author's stance from the title? No, we can't. What is the science? We don't know. Even though the essay doesn't openly tell us the writer's stance, it does exhibit clear bias. So I want you to read this essay, and then I want you to tell me if this author is for or against GMOs. So you can pause your video, read that, and then come back. Okay, welcome back. So this author is clearly pro-GMO. Okay, he's saying they're produced through relatively small and controlled changes. So in other words, it's not a big deal. They're pretty healthy for us. Okay, what other words do we see that help us understand this author is pro-GMO? Okay, well, small and controlled. Okay, desirable traits. Changes that are small and precise. Confer beneficial traits. Okay, and harmless bacteria. And desired. Desired has a positive connotation. Okay. Again, precise and controlled. A significant advantage. Okay, naturally pest-resistant organisms. So again, that word natural, we're showing this isn't that different than what nature intended. And then we see words like sustainable, environmentally friendly. Okay, so a lot of positive language here from this author that shows that he or she is pro GMO. I wouldn't say the author is very passionate or critical. I think he's trying to present himself as being objective, but he clearly has bias in favor of GMOs. Okay, so there are some of those words that help us understand this author's stance. Okay, so imagine this came from a school of agriculture. If you knew that ahead of time, how would that impact how you approach the text? Well, for me, I would think those students are learning about how to farm with GMOs. So I think that that author has probably got a vested interest in ensuring that GMOs are perceived as safe and healthy. So that would impact how I approach that text in terms of what I expect that author's stance to be. Okay, so imagine you see an article from this source, Foods for the Future, Growth Through Science. When I see something like that, I think, okay, I'm probably reading something that's pro-GMO. What if you see something that says certified organic foods? Here, I think I'm probably going to see something that is anti-GMO. Okay, so I want you to go through this paragraph here. Okay, and you can do this on your own. You can do it for homework. This is a fairly objective view of how GMOs are created. I want you to rework it and edit it so that it exhibits bias against GMOs. And then I want you to do the same thing, but I want you to exhibit bias in favor of GMOs. Okay? So let's take a look at this essay here. Okay, so here, clearly, this author is in support of food science. Okay, I want us to go and I want us to change this essay to show skepticism about the role of food science. So again, you've got a bit more homework here where you can go through and you can actually change this essay to exhibit a stance where the author is skeptical of food science. All right, so let's move to our final discussion here. I want you to tell me, how do you think science and technology are going to impact food and nutrition in the future? And do you think these changes are a long way off, or we'll experience them soon? Okay, so you can go ahead and you can jot down those ideas, or you can discuss them with a friend or a classmate. Okay, that's up to you. Okay, so you guys did a great job. Thank you so much. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment on the video. And I'll see you in our next English for Academic Purposes course.